I was debating, because there are two important events this week. One is Tu B'Shvat, which is tomorrow night. And the other one is this week's Parsha, where we read from the Aseres HaDibros. So I was debating whether to talk about the Tu B'Shvat Seder, or whether to talk about the reading of Aseres HaDibros, and some halachas revolving around the Decalogue, or the Ten Commandments. And I just couldn't get into the Tu B'Shvat Seder for some reason. I don't know. Maybe next year. I don't know. Just I wasn't feeling it this year. Okay. Mishnah in Maseches Tamid. And the sheets are over here. What does the Mishnah say in Maseches Tamid? The Mishnah says, Omer Lehem Hamamuna. Maseches Tamid is all about the protocol of temple service, of the daily temple service. That's why it's called Maseches Tamid. So the Mishnah says, Omer Lehem Hamamuna, the managing Kohen who was in charge of managing the shift, announced as follows: Baruch Hu bracha echas. After offering the Korban Tamid, he would say, now make a bracha, Vehem Baruch Hu. And they would say a bracha. Karu Aseres HaDibros. They would then recite the Ten Commandments. Shema v'haya im shemoa v'yomer. Then the three paragraphs of the Shema. Baruch Hu es ha'am shalosh brachos. They would then bless the nation with three blessings. And then it goes through the whole protocol of the liturgy of the Kohanim in the temple. Okay? The Meiri tells us something that is echoed in the Yerushalmi explicitly. The reason why they read Aseres HaDibros, Shekach haya minhag anshe mishmar likros Aseres HaDibros b'chol yom mitzad shehem yesod hadat. The reason for reading the Ten Commandments on a daily basis is because it forms the foundation of our whole faith. This is really just a quote from the Yerushalmi. Okay. So, careful.
Was it only the Anshe Mishmar or the Anshe Mamad as well? Or just...
That's a good question. I don't know. You can do the research. I'm not sure. But it seems like it was the Kohanim that are being addressed in this Mishnah. The Gemara in Maseches Brachos cites this minhag from the Mishnah in Maseches Tamid. And it states, V'koren Aseres HaDibros, Shema v'hayim Shema v'yomer emes v'yatziv, va'avoda ubirkas Kohanim. This was the protocol that the Kohanim read in the temple. And Amar of Yehuda Amar Shmuel, af bigvulin bikshu likros kain. They wanted to replicate this liturgical ritual outside of the temple. Ela shekvar bitlu mipnei tarumos haminim. But that practice was nullified because of the tarumos. There are different ways of translating tarumos. One way is sort of a libelous accusation, is what you could translate a taruma. Some translate it as a nonsensical accusation. But we want to silence that, and therefore they banned the recital of the Ten Commandments in prayer. Tanya no mihachi, Rabbi Nassan omer bigvulin bikshu likros kain, ela shekvar bitlum mipnei tarumos haminim. Rabbi Nassan says the same thing. Rabbi Bar Bar Chana savar lemikveinu besura. Rabbi Bar Bar Chana is in the times of the Amoraim, and he wanted to reinstate a daily recital of the Aseres HaDibros as part of davening. Amarle Rav Chisda kvar bitlu mipnei tarumos haminim. And he said, no, you can't. It was nullified because of the accusations of the minim. Now, we're going to demonstrate momentarily, the word minim, there's a bit of controversy among scholars what exactly minim means, whether it's a consistent term throughout Shas to refer to one specific group, or whether, depending upon the context, it refers to a different group of heretics in each instance. But one thing is clear, as we'll see. The word minim here refers to early Christians. You'll see that in just a minute. Ameimer sarv lemikveinu b'naharda amar le Rav Ashi kvar bitlu mipnei tarumos haminim. Ameimer wanted to set it up in Naharda. He said later Amora, And Rav Ashi said you can't because it was nullified by the minim. So it seems from these few lines in the Gemara that even already within the time of the Talmud Bavli in Bavel, there was a desire to reinstate the Aseres HaDibros in different generations, but the rabbis put a stop to it because of something called Tarumos Haminim, because of some kind of accusation or murmuring of the early Christians. So what does this mean? So Rashi says in Maseches Brachos, Mipnei Tarumos Haminim, Shelo Yomru La'amei Haaretz Ein Sha'ar Torah Emes. The argument being is that if we allow prominence to the Aseres HaDibros, the people, the Christians will say to the ignorant masses, the rest of the Torah is not true. The Teidu she'en koren ela ma she'amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'shamu mipiv b'Sinai. And the proof is that the Decalogue is the only portion of Torah that we actually heard from God himself at Har Sinai. Everything else is man-made. And so therefore we have to put that aside. And Rashi here translates, Haminin means akum, but that's a censor's edition. Akum means idolaters. And what it really means is, what the original edition was, Talmidei Yeshu, the disciples of Jesus. Correct. There is a machlokes, but I don't know if the minim care about that machlokes so much. What their argument is that the Torah says, "Es hadvarim ha'ela," these words you heard from Hashem Himself. That's what it says in Parshas Va'eschanan. So they'll say that that's why the Decalogue has so much prominence. The Rambam echoes the same idea in his commentary to the Mishnah that we started with in Maseches Tamid. Uchavar Amru, source number 5. Uchavar Amru bigvulim bikshu lomar kain, ela shekvar bitlu mipnei tarumos haminim. Now, velo nispar bebavli mahi tarumos haminim. The Gemara doesn't really explain what the accusation of these minim is. Avol nispoyer b'tchilas brachos Yerushalmi va'amru b'din haya sheyukoren aseres hadibros b'chol yom. But the Gemara Yerushalmi fills in the blanks. I didn't copy the Yerushalmi for you because the Rambam quotes it, and it says over there that really, by all rights, we should have read the Aseres HaDibros every day. It should have been part of our daily liturgy, just like Shema is, because that was what we did in the Beis Hamikdash. Umipnei ma ein koren oson mipnei tinas haminim shelo yu omrim elu levada nitnu lo l'Moshe b'Sinai. But the reason we don't is so that the minim should not make an argument that this was the only thing that we were commanded at Mount Sinai. Uchavar kavanu lashon zeh behilchos ha'Yerushalmi shechibarnu, and we've already established this language in the halachos of the Yerushalmi that we have composed. I don't know what the Rambam is referring to in that last line in this composition. Is he referring to something in the Mishnah Torah? I don't know, because I'm not aware where he says it there. But it could be that he was in the middle of writing something that never got published. I don't know.
Where would this have been, if we had stuck with it, where would this have been in davening?
It would have been, like it says in the Mishnah, it would have been before Shema, somewhere in, probably what we would call Birchas Kriya Shema. It would probably be after Baruch Hu and before Kriya Shema. Somewhere in there. Okay. Now, before we go into the Shulchan Aruch and the Mishnah Berurah, I just want to let you know that this sort of is synopsized in a number of scholarly works. There's a book from 1993 called Early Christianity and Judaism, which discusses how conflicts between early Christians and Jews affected synagogue service in the early parts of, rabbinic Judaism. And he writes, it's on the bottom of the page, conflict, the cultivation of dissimilarities. The early occurrence of tension between Jews and Jewish Christians had the effect of emphasizing differences rather than resemblances in the content of their worship. One account of this tension concerns the Decalogue, which had a place in the Christian service, where it may have come from the temple or the synagogue or because of its scriptural and doctrinal importance alone. We cannot simply decide without more ado, as Dugmore does, that the Decalogue owed its presence in the church service because it was recited in the synagogue service. But in any case, we see from the Talmud that apparently sometime after the middle of the 1st century, The synagogue saw itself compelled to effect a change in its service on account of particular views which the Jewish Christians held about the Decalogue. This change must have been made after a long time and much thought. We are told that the synagogue dropped the recital of the Decalogue because of the idle talk. That's how he translates Tarumos of the Minim. Rashi's comment on this explains that the idle talkers asserted that only the Ten Commandments represented the truly divine law. In other words, the recital of the Decalogue in the Christian service had, and must have had from the beginning, an anti-synagogual tendency stressing the validity of the Decalogue in contrast to the ceremonial law. Now, why is this important? What is one of the emphases of Christianity? Antinomianism. Antinomianism is the theology in Christianity that says that because of the sacrifice of Yashka, we are absolved from what's called ceremonial service. So therefore, if we highlight that the Decalogue is the only binding part of the Old Testament because of its moral code, so then it is binding upon us. And the rest of the, what he calls ceremonial law, is not binding because it's not directly from God. And that plays into the theology of early Christianity, okay? And the ability for them to convince the Jews that they wish to proselytize that it's not necessary anymore to observe the ceremonial law, only to observe the Decalogue. Its presence in the Christian service was not a sign of following in the path of the synagogue service, but of just the opposite, and the action of the synagogue was the reply. The comment of Rashi confirms the interpretation that has been given of Pliny's letter to Trajan describing the character of the Christian gatherings, namely that Pliny refers to the place the Decalogue took in their worship. There are some scholars, if you look, there's two Plinys. There's Pliny the elder and Pliny the younger. They both, one's the uncle and one's the nephew. They're both Roman generals or rulers, and they live in the first century of the Common Era. And there's one correspondence of Pliny the Younger to this general Trajan describing these early Christians. And in one letter, he writes about these early Christians that they would get up before dawn and recite confirmations of their faith, which sounds very similar to what is contained in the Ten Commandments. And that's why some scholars say that already in its inception, Christian liturgy involved a regular recital of the Ten Commandments. Okay, the Jewish Christian sectaries were doctrinaire biblicists interpreting the Old Testament in the light of the new evangel, and the Decalogue was the scriptural focus of their polemic in regard to the law. Okay? I just want to make sure if there's any question about what that means, just please ask me to clarify. But it seems pretty clear that the Aseret HaDibros was used as a tool against the Jewish practice of halacha and a defense of antinomianism, of the ability to absolve ourselves from regular, what he calls ceremonial law, or halachic practice.
So that's why we took it out?
So that's why we took it out.
Because they were using it.
Because they were using it as a polemic against halacha, so we took it out to show that, no, don't think that it's what the Christians think. Which is fascinating, but it's actually consistent with a lot of other halacha, where originally something is desirable to Hashem, and then later becomes rejected because it is adopted as an idolatrous practice. For the classic example is the matzeva, right? The Torah says that Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov offered karbanos to Hashem on a monolithic stone monument. But then later on in Sefer Dvarim it says, "V'lo sakim lecha matzeva, asher sanei Hashem Elokecha," that you're not allowed to make a matzeva. So what happened? If it was good enough for Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, why can we not do it? So as the Gemara clarifies, or Chazal clarify, it's because once the idolaters adopted it for themselves, it becomes now something that Hashem wants us to distance ourselves from. The Vilna Gaon famously says that even though the minhag on Shavuos was to bring trees into your house to replicate the situation at Har Sinai, but now that the Goyim have used the tree in the house as for their own purposes, we no longer bring a tree in our house. So of the same genre, now that the Decalogue is being used by Christians to support their arguments to absolve us from ceremonial law, we need to remove it as a counter-polemic to say, no, this is not the only part of the Torah which Hashem demands of us. He wants us to observe the entire Torah.
What is ceremonial law mean?
Halacha. Shake a lulav, sit in the sukkah, blow a shofar.
Torah Shabbal Peh?
Both Torah Shebichtav and Torah Shabbal Peh. Both of them. Ceremonial law.
Basically everything other than this.
All of Taryag mitzvahs, anything that I can put into practice physically. Bris Milah, Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, anything. Yeah.
Isn't the Decalogue itself, these are laws as well? I mean,
They are laws.
accept
So that's
that
the
among
question.
themselves.
That's the question. I mean, you could argue, are all of the mitzvahs of the Aseres HaDibros moral principles and not laws? Well, the only one that doesn't seem to fit is Shabbos. And I'll get to that in a minute. But when you try to consider each one of the 10 commandments, they involve either belief or attitudes or reverential commandments like honoring parents, right? But there's not much as far as, don't do this, don't do that. Those that are morally based. But besides Shabbos, that's the only exception. We'll get to Shabbos in a minute. It's an inconvenient truth, Shabbos in the Decalogue for the Christians. But anyway, because otherwise they won't be able to watch the football game. But anyway, let's go. So the Shulchan Aruch says, Tov Lomar, so this is in Shulchan Aruch Siman Aleph. It's in the first Siman in Shulchan Aruch. It says, Tov Lomar ha'akeda uparshas haman va'aseres hadibros uparshas ha'ola umincha ushlamim v'chatas va'asham. Really, the Shulchan Aruch here is telling us what it is advisable or a good thing to do on a daily basis. And these are all published in the Siddur, the Akeda and Parshas Haman, that Hashem supplied us with man on a daily basis, and the 10 Commandments, etc., etc. And the Ramah says, "V'dafka biyachid mutar lomar aseres hadibros b'chol yom, aval asr la'omram b'tzibur." You're only allowed to recite the aseres hadibros to yourself. But to say it as a synagogue practice publicly, together with a congregation, that you're not allowed to do. And as the Mishnah Berurah, we would expect him to say, Mipnei HaKofrim, because of the heretics. Sheyomru ein Torah zeh, ein Torah elazu, ubifrat bizmanenu. And especially in our age, when this is still a problem. Now, there's a Rashba who affirms this. There are other Rishonim who wanted to argue that it's not a problem today because we don't have those same minim who are making such an accusation. But that doesn't ring true, because this issue of the 10 Commandments being sort of superseding all other mitzvos that really don't count, I'll show you in a minute how that applies even today. He says, "Ulakach ein kosvin oso gamkin al kuntrus hamayuchad letzibur." Now, also says the Mishnah Berurah, an important halacha. Based on this halachically, it would never be permitted to publish a separate pamphlet with just the Aseres HaDibros that is meant as a congregational reader. Because if you do that, you're sort of feeding into this idea that the Decalogue occupies a special status. You're never allowed to give it more prominence than any other text in the Torah. So to publish it for a tzibur, let's say to have something on the wall with the Aseres HaDibros, he says, or a kuntras, like say you have a Megillah that is used by the tzibur for reading the Aseres HaDibros, that you wouldn't be allowed to have. Yesh kasvu, delo asr la'omer b'tzibur el lekobo bein habrachos k'mo kriyashma, aval koydem baruch sha'amar mutar af b'tzibur. There are those who wish to argue that it's only usher to incorporate Aseres HaDibros as part of the formal davening between Baruch Sha'amar and Shemona Esrei. Somewhere in there where you're already saying brachas. However, if you want to do it before Baruch Sha'amar, it's perfectly okay. V'ana naktinan lesor b'tzibur klal uklal, but we paskin that you can't do it at all in a tzibur, even if you do it before. U'v'yachid davka shelo b'toch ha'tefillah, v'al l'kvoa b'toch ha'brachos gam liyachid aser. And you can only do it as an individual. But even if you're an individual, you certainly cannot incorporate it in any of the formal davening either. Comes along the Ateres Tzivi. Yes?
I need to get strange if you put the Aseres HaDibros on top of the...
I'm getting there. Excellent. I'm getting there. Ateres Tzivi one of the Nosei Kalim to the Shulchan Aruch, Rav Tzvi Katz in the 17th century, writes, "V'dafke biyachid mutar lomar aseres hadibros, umohareinu harav Shlomo Luria, the Maharshal, hayanoheg laomra ulasamcha lebaruch sha'amar." His minhag was to say the aseres hadibros immediately before Baruch Sha'amar. And why did he do that? Lefisha benuschas Baruch Sha'amar ad Baruch atah hakel ha'avar hachaman yesh asara Baruch mechuvanim neged aseres hadibros. Because, if you notice, Baruch she'amar ve'alam Baruchu, Baruch Oseh v'rishis, Baruch omer ve'yoseh, Baruch ozer mekayim, Baruch omer chayim alos, Baruch necham b'riyos, Baruch mishalim sachar tov le'erav, Baruch chayim v'kayim lanetzach, Baruch padeo matzil, Baruch Shema. Okay, so maybe they don't count the first Baruch Hu. Okay, so it's 10. But in any event, there's 10 Baruchs. So, corresponding, that's why 10? Because of the Aseres HaDibros. So he would say the Aseres HaDibros right before Baruch Sha'amar. So, the cost of Od Sha'aviv Zekenu HaYaragil Omer Parshas Anochi Rishona Baboker Ve'anochi Shnei B'Parshas V'Eschanan Ba'erev Achar Sha'amar Kriyas Shema Al Mitasa. And he says, since there are two versions of the Aseres HaDibros, one in Parshas Yisro and one in Parshas V'Eschanan, his father used to say the version in Parshas Yisro in the morning, and in the evening, after he would say Kriya Shema Lamita, he would say the version of the Aseres HaDibros in Parshas V'Eschanan. The Chida, Talmud of the Arizal, says, and we're going to see two tshuvas if we have time tonight from the Chida. The first one is Siman Yud, and he writes, Hinei Bereish, or Chaim Kosav Bahagav V'dafki Yachid Mutter Lomar Aseres HaDibros, Aval Asur La'omram B'tzibur, V'hachi Itmar B'Bavli V'Yerushalmi Perakama Debrachos. And the reason why you can't say the Aseres HaDibros publicly is, as the Gemara both in the Bavli and the Yerushalmi explained, the Bitlu Mipnei Tarumos Haminim, because of what we call Tarumos Haminim. Because of Moran Beveis Yosef, Tahinu Dafka B'tzibur Vol B'yachid Shari, Uve'emes Diyesh Litmoa Al Aritha HaRambam V'Harosh V'Ravan V'Rabbeinu Yerucham Asher Poskei Halachos Tihishmituha. He says, it's a pella why all of the Rishonim left out this halacha that you're allowed to recite the Aseres HaDibros B'yachid. Ule'inyan halacha, afal gavdim, and so he goes through it, but this is an abridged version of the tshuva. He says, but the bottom line, afal gavdim aharshal b'tshuva simin samach dalet hinig b'veis hakneser shelo likrosim kodem baruch sha'omar. He says, even though, like we saw in the Ateres Tzvi, that the Maharshal used to read it before Baruch Sha'amar, v'daito dema shabitlum haya b'kriya shema, kamo shapiresh Rashi, ein lismoch al zeh. You should not be somech on the Maharshal to allow yourself to read the Aseres HaDibros even privately before Baruch Sha'amar. Chada d'pshat hashas shelo la'omram b'tzibor legamre. First of all, he says, to say it before Baruch Sha'amar publicly, as far as part of the formal davening, that the Maharshal said is okay, but you should not be somech on that, because first of all, because the Gemara implies that you can never say it publicly. The Hanach Amoroi deboy lemikvu and v'amru lahem kfar bitlum haya lahem lomar delikveinu kodem Baruch Sha'amar achar tefillah shmona esrei b'seder Gemara tefillah v'may bitlum legamre. He says the proof is because all of those Amoraim at different stages of the Talmud era wanted to reinstitute it, and they told them you can't. Why didn't they tell them, okay, you could do it, just do it before Baruch Sha'amar and after Shmona Esrei? The fact that they told them they can't do it at all indicates that the Maharshal is mistaken. It's not just that you can't put it in Kriya Shema, you can't say it at all. Ve'av sheyesh litchos nirin hadvarim debatlum legamri. V'su de maharashba mashma de'im litzibur l'omrim klal kamo shekasvu achronim. And the Rashba seems that way as well. Even though the poskim omitted this whole halacha that you cannot say it b'tzibor, nonetheless, we're still going to stick with the Rashba because by him it's explicit. We don't know why they didn't include this halacha. Anyway, v'hinei das hatur amoran umaramudu amayu deshari laomram biyachid. He says that the Tur and the Arizal and Umoram, I'm not sure who that refers to, Umorenu, The Rabbeinu is at the Rambam, Morenu Ram, and all the others.
Is that the Rabbi Rittenberg?
No, I don't think so. He wouldn't. The Chida wouldn't be quoting him that way. He says that it is permitted to say it privately. Va'ani ba'ani kosafti b'sefer hakatan machzik bracha, demashma deharizal savar de'en la'omer mafilu b'yachid ayin sham. But what I've written in another composition is that the Ari is of the opinion that you should not even say it privately. V'chein kosav harav knesses hagadol de'amirik shal la'omer bein b'tzibur bein b'yachid. Umiyu efsher dikpedas ha'arizat sal hainu koidem tefila dedami lamasha bitlu b'shay rotzim lakovim b'tefila val achar tefila im be'emtzu kvius limudo yikreim shapir dami. But it could be that the Arizal was only makbid not to say it before davening. Because if you say it before davening, like the Maharshal was doing, then you're implying it's part of your daily prayer routine. But let's say you completely finish davening, and you're ready to start learning, and before you start learning, you say Aseres Adibros. That, he says, I think even the Arizal would be okay with. Which is why, in the Sidurim that publish the Aseres Adibros after davening, that's where it is. Because even the Arizal, according to the Chida, would not protest. Okay. Now, just to prove to you, even though there were some who wanted to argue that these minim no longer argue this anymore, I will take a little interlude. I published this article that I found that was written in 2015, just to show you that this is still being debated among Christian theologians. So I don't know, I feel bad because I put it after a few lines of Rav Moshe's tshuva. Maybe it's an insult to Rav Moshe to have Moshe Feinstein above an essay like this. But in any event, it's posted by a reverend, and he writes like this at the very back. He says, many Christian commenters today are expressing concern about antinomian tendencies in the church. We are especially seeing attempts to downplay the role of God's law as a guide to Christian living, the so-called third use of the law. One question that comes into play is whether or not the Ten Commandments should be thought of as a uniquely and eternally binding statement of God's moral law. Or, in contrast, are the Ten Commandments just part of the diverse Mosaic corpus intended only to govern the lives of a particular ancient Near Eastern people and thus more or less inapplicable outside that world? In addressing this concern, I would like to offer 4 arguments for why the Ten Commandments should be seen as separate and distinct from the other rules and regulations of the Mosaic economy, and why the Ten Commandments do set forth the universally binding moral law of God that is intended to serve as a guide for the lives of believers of all times, including today. And he lays forth his 4 reasons. Notice that reason number 1, the way that the Ten Commandments were given informs us of their special and eternal significance. Is there nothing closer to what the Gemara just said than what this fellow writes in the year 2015 of their Lord, right? So it seems pretty current. And that's why the Mishnah Berurah said that, especially today, it's important to emphasize this. Courtrooms in the United States, I don't know about Canada. Do they do it in Canada also? Have the Ten Commandments in the courtrooms?
It's quite controversial, right? Because they were taking them out.
They were controversial.
They've been removed now.
At one time, they were removed in some magistrates. I don't think in all magistrates.
That was how Roy Moore, who lost that vote in Alabama to become senator or governor, whatever it was. He was a judge who wanted to reinstate the Decalogue in the outside the courtroom, but I think he lost that also.
Okay.
I can attest to the fact that they're not visible. I don't know if they don't exist, but they're not visible in courtrooms in the province of Ontario.
Okay.
So,
You haven't seen them. Okay.
look, but, yeah.
All right, next time look. Okay. But I want to get to Derek's issue in just a minute. The Magen Avram tells us a very interesting halacha. Take a look in source number 11. On this halacha in Shulchan Aruch that we just learned, says the Magen Avram, B'tzibur b'mnei haminim shomein Torah elazu ubifrat bizmanenu. Same language Mishnah Berurah was quoting from him when he says ubifrat bizmanenu. Especially in our times, this argument that only the Decalogue counts has resurfaced. V'lachein en kosven oso al kuntrus hamiyuchad letzibur. That's what the Mishnah Berurah had said. Okay, now take a look at a tshuva from Rav Betzalel Stern, Zichrono Livracha, who was a posek of the 20th century. Din chagura l'sefer Torah shebar zelim b'tzurat haluchot va'aseret hadibrot kivuim ba. What's the shaila? You buy a new gartel
That's the answer.
for the Sefer Torah, and the buckle on the gartel
Seriously.
has is in the form of the Aseres Hadibros. Like we have?
I think we
We
have.
probably do have. Nish'alti b'davar b'dvar hamitpachat l'Sefer Torah sheragilim likroch ota kama pe'amim svivot ha'Sefer Torah be'et gelilat ha'Sefer Torah achrei akriya b'tzibur. He says there used to be, they used a vimple, right? Which is like a cloth that you wrap around many times around the Sefer Torah. V'cha'et himtziu chagura shemishtamshim ba b'likricha. Ele shehi choveket et ha-Sefer Torah pa'am echat v'hi asuya b'tzura dilahalan. But now, a new invention of the 20th century, an elastic gartel, So, amazing. It's an
They
amazing...
do that because they want to avoid the issue of tying a knot on Shabbos.
Yeah, okay. Now, b'shtei ketzot hachagura kivuim barzelim hamisamlim et luchot habrit im aseret hadibrot al derech zu. So they have, in this elastic gartel, each buckle has one of the two tablets, and a facsimile of one of the two tablets. Me'al gav habarzel shebiktzei hachagura mizeh boltin ha'otiyot aleph beis gimel daled hey zulam atamizu. Ume'al habarzel shebikatzeu hashniya shel hachagura boltin ha'otiyot vav zayin chestes yud zulam atamizu. Do you have the picture? One buckle is a square, or like Michelangelo from Rabbi Leiter's drasha, is in the form of a tablet, and it has Aleph Beis Gimel Dalet Hey on this side, and the other buckle in the shape of a tablet, Vav Zayin Ches Tes Yud. So you get clearly the artist who designed the buckle designed it so that it should look like the Ten Commandments, and you put it together, it looks beautiful. So, Shuv Mechabrim Shnei Haktzavot Ayidei Keres O Mismar Hakavua B'Chagura, and that's how they clip it together. V'nishalti imutar lishtamesh b'chagura zu l'glilat ha-Sefer Torah. They asked me the shaila, can we use this to do glila with? Now, lanias daiti yesh to'eles rav b'chagura zu hachadasha. It would seem to me that there's great benefit to using such a gartel. Ki biyom Shabbos kodesh ubifrat achar hakriya lemincha nimnoim rabbi milikshor es hamitfachas afilu al yedei aniva ki muvar b'shailos tshuva zichron Yehuda. He says there are a lot of people who are makpid not to make even a bow on Shabbos as a chumrah, that not even to tie a bow on Shabbos is okay. And rak tochvin ktsei hamatfachat letoch hakricha. So what do? They wrap it around a couple of times, and then they stick in one end into, stuff it into the wraparound. V'harbe pa'amim ze nimshach luchutz v'hakricha na'aseit refuya umitoch kach nishmat tzido ha'echad shel ha'sefer Torah lamata kasher nosa'a eno samlev al ze b'miyuchad. He says, and what's going to happen? It's going to come loose because they didn't stick it in well, and it's why when they carry it, one end of the Sefer Torah will become heavier than the other. It'll become detached, and it could cause damage to the Sefer without their knowledge. Lo kena b'chagura zu hachadasha lo yitachen kazeh. Not with the new and improved Sefer Torah gartel, this will never happen. It almost sounds like a commercial. Amnam tov lachkor im ein zeh hamtzaat hamechadshim. He says, the only thing we have to look into, is this considered to be an innovation that you're not supposed to innovate? Not supposed to innovate newfangled stuff. Ki az ein l'shanot meha nahug mizeh dor dorot yisharim avotenu v'rabotenu zuchu yosam, etc. May their merit protect us, right? What does Nun Al Ayin stand for again? I don't remember. But Neiram, or I'm not sure. But anyway, something something. Anyway, maybe you're not supposed to change the minhag of what we've been doing for generations.
What's the other word? Zechusam
Zechusam yagunu aleinu ve'al Kol Yisrael Amen. Okay. All right. Anyway, so Va'asher Las. So I skipped a little bit of the tshuva. So he writes Va'asher La'aseres Hadibros Haboltim. No, maybe I didn't skip it. No, I think I got the whole thing. Va'asher La'aseres Hadibros Haboltim Al Gabi Habarzelim Hasuim B'tzuras Luchos B'Shteiktzos Achagura. So as far as having this facsimile of the Ten Commandments, Hinei B'Ramah Mivor She'ein Lomar Aseres Hadibros B'Tzibur. Umavur mitoch divrei ha'achronim delola amar bilvad asur b'tzibur elahu adin lishtamish bahem asur b'fnei rabin. And if you look at the achronim, he says not only can you not recite it publicly, but even to use it in some prominent way for public use is not permitted, like the Magen Avram had said, that you're not allowed to have a special kuntras, a separate publication with just the Ten Commandments. Ayin Magen Avram sham b'shem halechem chamudos. She'en kosvin osam al kuntrusam yuchad l'tzibur uveshut shuras chai muvuar demakol shekein she'en lokosv al kosle beis hakneses mibifnim umibachut shu galui sham tamid. And this the shuv of shuras chai, I don't know who that is, but it's an earlier Shilas Tshuva Sefer. He says that you're not even allowed to post the Ten Commandments on the Aron, neither on the inside of the Aron or the outside of the Aron, for that very same reason. Gam b'shut zecher or zachar or zecher Yehosaf kasav lahazer milachakok aseres hadibros baron hakodesh ul olet sayrim b'sharei hachumashim ushar sfarim hayin sham. And this other tshuva sefer also writes, do not place the Ten Commandments on the Aron, and do not put it on the sharblat of any published sfarim.
It's right there.
It's on the cover of Art School.
Uh-oh.
Most of them are Mashim.
With Michelangelo.
Is it with Michelangelo version?
No, but is it?
There we go.
Oh, you should send a letter.
Yeah, talking.
Most of them.
Okay.
Lots of shuls have it.
Lots of shuls have it. Okay. V'yoser mizeh ayin b'sefer nimukei orchos chayim sha'aviv hagon hakadosh bal darchei tshuva hizer gam ken al anal v'gam b'shekvar nase po'al b'kam mekoymois lahavira mei ha'aron hakodesh. And he says he even advocates that where it was already put in place, you should remove it if it's already on the Aron. No, I think we're okay. We're okay so far. One second. Okay, we're good. Shh. Uh-oh. Just kidding. All right, anyway. Uvenidon didan im kein eno chokak ala barzelim anochi lo yilacha rak aleph beis gimel dalet hey vav zelamata mizel derech shayiksuvim beluchos. He says, now, getting to our shaila, maybe it's not so bad, because we're not actually putting the Ten Commandments on each one of the buckles. We're just putting letters that, just representing the commandments. So maybe it's just like the letters Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalet. Maybe that doesn't mean anything. Maybe it's fine. Ayin b'sefer kamo hashachar shekosov shegam zero meiz la'aseres hadibros vikar tarumos haminim u'meilo shugam came b'chlal iser ayin sham. No, the sefer kamo hashachar writes that even Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalet, Hey is a representation of the Ten Commandments and is giving prominence to the Ten Commandments by creating such a facsimile. So that's also no good. Biram. Ra'isi b'sefer ma'asef l'chol hamachanos b'shem sefer orach neman l'lamed zchus al mashanagu lichtov aseres hadibros al tav le'me'al la'aron hakodesh. But I did find in this sefer a limud zchus, why we can defend the practice of putting the Ten Commandments on top of the Aron. Dahavi ki'ilu mechuvanim bazeh lahorot shekol hakatuv b'sefer Torah sheba'aron hakodesh havi kemo aseres hadibros v'hakol misinai ayin sham. And his argument is like this, right? It's like this kind of argument, right? The argument is having the Ten Commandments above the Aron is a statement that every scroll that's in the Ark has the same divine transmission, just like the Aseres Hadibros was transmitted by God. So too, every single Sefer Torah, every single word of every single Sefer Torah that's in this Aron was also transmitted by Hashem directly, via Moshe. And that's what is being conveyed by the Aseres Hadibros. But of course, you know that he says like this, Ulanias daiti, Lulei she'eni kedai savar kalusha hizu. He says, I'm not worthy of arguing with this great posek who wrote those words, but it's a weak argument at the end of the day. The kevin shenasnuhu me'ala aron hakodesh ka'atar lo efshir da'adara b'loharos bo shehu ha'ikar mikol ma'ashikasuv b'sifrei Torah sheba aron hakodesh. Because you can make the exact opposite argument, that it's trying to point out that despite the fact that we have a lot of script in this ark, the only important part is the Ten Commandments that's above it. So you could go in either direction, right? Al kain bevadai das hagoinim shehizkarti less or ikr, and therefore it makes much more sense to side with those poskim who say that it is forbidden. And just the last few lines, mikol makom benidon didan. But getting back to our buckle, now that we've assured having the Aseres Hadibros on top of the Aron HaKodesh, but let's get back to our belt buckle, our gartel buckle. Kevin shahachagura shebnei ktsofoseha kevuim habarzelim b'tzuras haluchos v'aleim haosios aleph beis gimel v'chulei haromzim al Aseres Hadibros omedes lishamesh lahasefer Torah. He says this is a little bit better. He says, because what's the whole function of the gartel in the first place? It's to serve to seal the Sefer Torah properly, to hold the Sefer Torah together. He says, Im kein mistaver shelo nasu bishvil shemachazik otam liikar, ela adarab l'ramei shakol nichlal ba'aseret hadibrot u'chsvarat ha'orach neman hanal, al kein ein tzarach lanias daiti limnoa milihishtamesh bahem. He says, in this case, you clearly see that the gartel is ancillary to the Torah. And therefore, if anything, if there is a metaphorical message in this buckle, it's to say that everything that's in this Sefer Torah is as important as the Aseres HaDibros, right? Just like the previous argument about the Aseres HaDibros above the Aron.
Isn't this whole argument very analogous to some people wanting to stand Aser HaDibra, standing for everything?
We're getting to that. Okay. That's our next discussion. So, according to Rav Stern, now you can be Malamid Zchus on shuls that have the Aseres HaDibros above the Aron. You could. Or on the Chumash, or...
We have it in the Beis Medrash.
We have it in the Beis Medrash, right? You could be Malamid Zchus. There is a Limud Zchus. There are poskim who permit it. But, just remember, the next time you build an Aron, you may want to take into account the B'tzel HaChachma. Okay. Shulchan Aruch. Another halacha in Shulchan Aruch, Siman Kuf Mem Vav, which is what Harold was getting to. Ein tzarech lamod me'umad be'isha koren b'Torah. You do not have to stand during Kriyas HaTorah. The person getting the aliyah has to stand, unless he's disabled. But everyone else can be seated, okay? The yesh machmirin va'omdim, the chenasa maharam, and the Ramah brings that some people are machmir and they stand during Kriyas HaTorah, and the Nosei Kalim bring that even those poskim who say that it's a kedai to stand would agree that bein gavra legavra you're allowed to be seated, okay? Fine. So comes along the chidah in the tshuva immediately after the one that we just saw, about the Aseres HaDibros. And he writes as follows, B'amesha kamen b'kriyas Aseres HaDibros b'Sefer Torah. The Sefer Torah, I guess, yeah. The minhag to stand for the reading of the Ten Commandments during the reading from the Sefer Torah of the Aseres HaDibros, which we'll do this Shabbos, and which we'll do on Shavuos, and which we'll do in Parshas Voeschan and Shabbos Nachamu as well. She'ila bekama mekomos nagu ha'am lakum k'shekaron Aseres HaDibros b'Sefer Torah b'Parshas Yisro v'Shvuos b'Parshas Voeschana. That's the minhag. Many people have a minhag to stand, and even the gabbai claps on the bima to indicate that everyone should stand, yes? V'yesh she'ir aru al zeh demuchach b'shas de'ein lasos hefresh bein Aseres HaDibros l'sha'ar HaTorah. And some protest this practice because you're not supposed to create a separation between the Aseres HaDibros and the rest of the Torah. Moshe Kasav b'shas debitlu kriyasim mipnei tar umos haminim yoreinu hamoreh Yeah, so please tell us what we should do. I don't know what the abbreviation Vishin Chaf Mem Hey. I don't know what that abbreviation means, but please tell us, what should we do? That's the shaila that was brought to the Chida. Tshuva. So his response is Nira Delo Dami. Says it's not the same as what Chazal were concerned about. He says the Tarumos Haminim Hu Kamo Shekasu B'Yerushalmi Perakama Debracho Shelo Yomru Elu Levadam Nitlu L'Moshe B'Sinai. He says because what does the Yerushalmi say? That the Minim were arguing that this is the only part that was God-given, everything else is man-made. V'Rashi Hosif Levoyer Bebavli Sham Perakama Debracho Shelo Yomru Amei Haaretz Ein Sha'ar Torah Emes. That Rashi says, like we learned, that the Amei Haaretz will think that the rest of the Torah isn't true, it's not important. The Teidu Shein Koren Elamasha Omar HaKadosh Baruch Hu V'Shamu Mipiv B'Sinai Akan L'Shono. And the proof is that, look, when we recite a daily prayer from the Bible, we only recite the 10 Commandments, and we don't recite the rest of the Torah. So that's the reason why we can't recite it publicly. V'im kein hacha shekoren b'sefer Torah kol haTorah midei Shabbat b'Shabbato v'gam b'yom zeh shehem koren aseres hadibros koren me'ezeh chelek me'haTorah b'sefer Torah. He says, but when we're reading the weekly Torah portion, people can see. Every single Shabbos we're reading from another portion of the Torah. And even in Parshas Yisro, we're reading the frontal material before the 10 Commandments. We're reading the part that comes after the 10 Commandments in Parshas Yisro. Therefore, leslan ba demuchach da hakol emes. So it's clearly indicated that we believe in everything, otherwise we wouldn't read it. Ela shehem omdim bahem lihios shehem yesod haTorah. So then why do we stand? Not because we don't believe in the other portions, but rather because we believe that the 10 Commandments contain the foundational principles in abbreviated form of the entire Torah. V'nichtavu beluchos, and that they were written, therefore, in the tablets, whereas the rest of the Torah was not. V'omram HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'chol Yisrael. And furthermore, God said them directly to the Jewish people, Vayecherad kol ha'am ba'amiras HaKadosh Baruch Hu osam. And everyone was in trepidation when we heard Hashem saying them. And that's the reason people want to stand. To show that it's an important, it has a distinction from the rest of the Torah, but not that the rest of the Torah is untrue or unimportant, and therefore it's not a problem. Ume'ein dugma kasav harav Mata Yehuda sof sifkat heil masha kasav harav Beis Yaakov ayin sham. And especially because this minhag has been well established for many, many years. V'nira d'me'acher shenagu ha'amkein lakum kulam b'aseres hadibros nira shechayovim hakol la'amod. Now, once the rest of the congregation stands, he says it's one thing if people wouldn't stand. We wouldn't require you to establish such a minhag, says the Chida, because, okay, I hear the argument that you don't want to give any prominence or any differentiation to the Aseres HaDibros. But if that's already the minhag, there's no reason to protest against it. And I'll go even one step further. Now that everyone is standing for Aseres HaDibros, you, the kanoi, do not have a right to be seated during Aseres HaDibros. He says, "Ve'en lo shomecha lishor yoshev, degam sheinu min adin lakum ata shenago akol bazeh nase chiyuv al hakol." He says, because even if you were to argue, Mr. Kanoi, it's not right, we shouldn't give prominence to Aseres HaDibros, yada, yada, yada. But if everyone is standing, you have no right to be poresh min hatzibor. V'imlav chas v'sholom b'nei hamo nir kimizalzel. Because if you don't stand, you're going to look like someone who is mizalzel in the mitzvahs. Va'od amru, I'll tell you, it's an interesting thing. I once had someone come over to me and say, is there a halacha that you have to stand for the tefillah lishlom hamedina? And I said, no, there's no such halacha that you have to stand for the tefillah lishlom hamedina. But if everyone else is doing it, you darn be better sure that you're doing it, because if you sit while everyone else is seated, you're implying that you're not praying for the Medina, whether it's Canada or whether it's Israel or whatever it is. It's like in the realm of nir'eh kimizalzel. If everyone else is standing up, even though there's no halacha, like if someone were to institute this halachically, right? It's instinctual that people started to stand they wanted to show kavod to the Medina, so they started to stand, right? There's no halachic basis for it. It was kavod for the Medina, so everyone stood. But once it's instituted, for you to sit while everyone else is standing, you're a mezalzel, and that's not right. Right, it's like a porish min hatzibur, but it's like but why? Why is it wrong in this case? Because you're a mezalzel in what the rest of the tzibur is doing. Right? Va'o da amru lo yeshev bein ha'omdim. And like Chazal say, you're not allowed to sit among people who are standing. It's not derech eretz. Umizeh karatager harav knesses hagdola. I think that's the abbreviation. Orach hachayim simin samach beis berosho al hayoshvim be'ez shiva brachas. The kevin denag ulamo zeh sheyoshev over al lo yeshev bein ha'omdim ayin sham. Apparently, there used to be a minhag to stand for Sheva Brachas, maybe under the chuppah. We don't have such a minhag today. Everyone is seated at the chuppah, except for those oisfarfs in the back. But anyway, the people who are seated and are seated like mentioned, we don't have a requirement for them to stand for Sheva Brachas, right? But it used to be that we're such a minhag. If such a minhag crops up for some strange reason, everyone stands for Sheva Brachas. So you have to stand too for Sheva Brachas. You can't be Porish Min HaTzibur because you're Yoshev, that's what Chazal call Yoshev, Lo Yeshev Bein Ha'omdim. You can't sit while everyone else is standing. Okay, which brings us, and this is what we'll finish with tonight, the tshuva from Rav Moshe, who also has a tshuva on this. So this is from the Chida, it's from the 17th century. So, but Rav Moshe gives a contemporary tshuva for the issue. Amidas Ha'am B'kriyas Aseres HaDibros, from his son, Rav David Feinstein Shlita. And he says, and this is from Orach Chaim Chelik Dalet Simchav Beis, he says, Hinei bedover amidas ha'am b'shas aseres hadibros shenagu sheyesh mefak v'kim meha de'isa bebrachos daf yud beis amar aleph the Amar of Yehuda Amar Shmuel af begvulim bikshu likros aseres hadibros b'kriya shmakmo b'mikdash alek shvar bitl mipnei terumas haminim. He quotes the Gemara in Brachos that they abolished a public recital of the Decalogue. Upirish Rashi, Shelo Yomru La'am Ha'aretz Ein Shar Torah Emes. The Teidu Shein Karne Elamasha Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu V'Shamim Mipid V'Sinai. And that's and he quotes Rashi, who says the reason why we don't read the Decalogue is because the Minim would prey upon the ignorance of the Amoratzim, and they would tell them, you see, that's why we read the Aseres HaDibros daily and not the rest of the Torah, because it's the only part that Hashem really said and nothing else is real. Shelachein harei keshomdim b'shas Aseres HaDibros v'yoshvim b'shas kol hakriya gam ken yavo lomar kein. So the argument, as we saw from the Chida, is people will say the same thing. If you're only standing for Aseres HaDibros and you're sitting for the rest of the time, so doesn't that make the same statement?
Although we also stand for the Shira.
We also stand for the Shir. Okay, so listen, you'll see. So let's take a look at what Rav Moshe says. Where else do we stand besides the Aseres HaDibros and the Shira?
Sefer, right?
For the end of the Kriyas HaTorah, when we get to the end of the Sefer also, right? Very good. Is that required? I'm not sure.
Zohar.
Parsha Zohar we stand? Really? Really? I didn't know that. No? That's your recollection? You're probably laning it so you don't notice.
Does the Bible just stand for when they say the Ten Commandments or for the whole Aliyah? Because what I've done, they stand for the whole Aliyah so you don't...
No. Actually, there is such a practice. Have everyone stand up at the beginning of the Aliyah so as not to make that stark contrast. There is such a minhag like that to avoid this problem of showing the contrast between the material before and the present material. Okay, but no, that's our minhag is to stand only for the Aseres HaDibros. Vayidaber Elokim is called, Vayidaber Moshe is called the Devrim Vayidaber Hashem is called the Devrim Ha'ila Lemor. Okay? V'im hikushya ein hateretz shaheveta melikute mahariach machma sheika tam lama lezecher v'yamdu merachok shahisa b'shazu klum. He says, and if it is a problem, says Rav Moshe, the answer, or sort of the teretz that you brought my son Rav David from the Likutei Mahariach, is that we stand she'ika tam la'amod lezecher vayamdu meirachok shahisa b'sha'azu. he says, or Lizkor, Vayamdu Merachok, Shaisa B'Shazu, he says, the reason why we stand for Aseres Adibros is because the nation stood when they were listening to the Aseres Adibros. That's why we stand. Klum, he says, that's not a good answer. Dahagam B'Kriyas Aseres Adibros Ikatam Godol La'omran B'Kriyashma. Aval Chashashu La'amiras Haminim She'eno B'Shvil Zeh El Shirak Elu Levad Hu Emes. He says, if you want to be historically accurate, then let's read the Aseres Hadibros every day so that we can re-experience Kabbalah HaTorah. The fact of the matter is, though, despite the validity of the argument that we heard the Aseres Hadibros from Hashem, we still don't say it in our daily Kriya Shema because of the Tarumos Haminim. So that argument of Tarumos Haminim, if it's enough to obliterate the recital completely, it's also enough to compel us to be seated, even though Bnei Yisrael stood when they heard it. Then he quotes from the Chidah. He says, the argument that you brought, Rav David, which is that since we're reading the rest of the Torah, the frontal matter and the back matter, even though we're seated, but we're demonstrating that we believe that portion to be correct, he says that's also a dachuk. Because if that was a good argument, then why is it that they still were mevatel the reading of the Aseres Hadibros, despite the fact that we're also reciting the 3 paragraphs of Shema? He says that's not enough of a reason, because if that were enough of a reason, like the Chidah argued, then we should be able to say Aseres Hadibros every day together with Kriya Shema. The fact that we're reciting Kriya Shema is an indication that we believe in the rest of the Torah. But you see, not that way. You see that the concern was that the Minim are going to prey on the ignorance of the masses and say, Kriya Shema doesn't count. The fact is, we focus only on Aseres Hadibros. Kol shekein b'Kriyas HaTorah sha'osin shinoi sheyesh lachush Shahashinoi hu sheyamru haminim delachein mechabdim kriya zu mishum derak says there is min hashamayim v'hashar Moshe ba'atzma amra. He says, and certainly here, look, if Chazal had a minhag, a perfectly good minhag, that first you say Aseres Hadibros, then you say 3 paragraphs of Shema, and they said, no, we now have to excise Aseres Hadibros because of Tarumos Haminim, certainly in a case where you stand up for this Aseres Hadibros and give it even more importance than the other Torah portions that you read, certainly that is certainly in the same realm as the concern that Chazal had of Tarumos Haminim. Aval ma sha'ata mitaretz machma shenagu lamod gam b'shiras hayam b'parshas b'shalach u'v'shvi shel Pesach shemizero and she'ika od devarim she'omdim af shelo shayach sham divrei haminim yavinu shumitam acher hu teretz nachon. So, Simi, you're mechaven to what Rav Moshe says. Rav Moshe says, here's the real answer. The real answer why it's okay to stand for Aseres Hadibros is because it's not the only portion in the Torah where we stand. Where else do we stand? Az Yashir, which we did in last week's Parsha, Shira Sayam. Shvi Shal Pesach, we stand when we read Az Yashir. And we also stand, like you mentioned, Simi, for the reading at the end of the Torah, before we say Chazak v'nis Chazek. And so therefore, says Rav Moshe likes that the best. He says, the fact is that there are special portions that we stand for, and the standing does not negate the importance of the rest of the Torah. It just says that this is a national event that we want to commemorate in a standing position to show that it has important national significance to us. And that, he says, is the real reason. And then he says why Bichlal it's not a question, and I'll let you do the rest on your own. And with that, we will finish. Any questions, comments? Okay. Yes, Paul.
I guess we never talked about how the Christians can deal with this number 4, the Shabbos.
How do they deal with number 4? So, as you can imagine, there was a book published in the 1800s that I was looking at online today. And the pastor there says that everyone extols the virtues of the Decalogue, but they don't know what to do with the Sabbath. They don't know what to do with it. So ultimately it is consigned to a moral value, that you should have a day of rest for contemplation for the Lord.
That's where they get this Sunday.
So that's the Sunday. Sunday is the Christian Sabbath. And if it's observed properly, then it should be a day of spiritual growth and speculation. So that's how they observe the Sabbath. It's a moral value, not necessarily a ceremonial law like we mentioned before.
Just for the other night.
Yeah. Okay.
Quite.